we're in great hands here. You were on the Giants Fremantle game, and not just on it, you were on it. You forecast that on crunch time. You forecast what the Tigers did. You watched yesterday behind the goals, so I feel like we're in great hands for our means test. Give us a kid's gambit. Anything you like to start.
Okay, now this is this is left field, and there'll be people driving and they'll go, oh, hang on. So I made mention the other day, David Parkin, when you speak to him, you say, when does he coach best? And he said, well, he's won premierships at Hawthorn and Carlton. And he says, no, I coach my best at Fitzroy. I had the least to work with and I got the most out of them. That was when I coached best. I think Brett Ratten is coaching the best of his career. And it might have something to do with, I've got this job almost by accident here at North Melbourne. There's no pressure on me. So what I am going to involve myself in is an attempt to do 100% right by the club and its future. And there's no pressure on me to keep my job. Do I really want the job? Well, I'm happy planting trees. I don't have to have this job. I've done it. I've been at the coalface before. So he's doing what he believes is right for the team. The other thing that really strikes me is, in this world right now where we have some coaches who say, oh, I don't coach motivation, they should be motivated at league football. Make no mistake, you have to give at certain occasions a spiritual feeling, belief to your players that they can achieve, and with the right effort that they can win, they can achieve. It looks like North Melbourne believe. They've lost 4 in a row with Brett Ratten. But there are moments yesterday when the considered man sat in the stands and he looked at the scoreboard, he went, no, they won't win. But the North Melbourne players didn't believe that. Yeah. They believed they could still win. They still came at the Bulldogs, and they might have gone down by 3.5 goals in the end. But that's with the coach, that he's got them feeling that way. And he's also, some of the things he's done, he's Tim Powell, Bailey Scott, he's given them more responsibility. Will Phillips, he's allowed him to display what's in his DNA. Eddie Ford, he's having a good look at him. He's been hampered, Comden's gone down. He's a little bit hampered. Cal Coleman-Jones he's a ruckman who's lumbering his way into the forward line. So that's a bit of a hamstring. And his back line, he's trying to make do. But the back line, actually, they're getting caravanned around. I sat behind the goals yesterday for a different view. I actually put in the request at the start of the year, said, just stick behind the goals for one game. And so Tom Hawkins said, we put out the invite to him, would you like to come up and commentate? So he kindly did that, which allowed me to go behind the goals, to get almost the old Bob Ansett day behind the worker's desk for the executive, to get a look at it from somewhere else. And I loved it. It was fantastic. But the North Melbourne backmen play back shoulder, and they got caravan towed around a bit. Yeah, they were game, they had a go, but they played into a mobile forward's hands. You can break that down a little bit more if you'd like, but I just had a look at some of the things with Rats. He's had 92 wins and 93 losses, and the 4 losses have all come now to tip him over that. He's had 2 wins from 6 finals appearances. He won 59 at Carlton, drew 1, lost 56. At the Saints, he won 33, lost 33, so he was line ball. And at North, he's lost 4. So you'd say his coaching record would suggest he's been worst at North Melbourne. I reckon he's coaching with a freedom to achieve for North Melbourne and giving them, the young blokes especially, a responsibility to go out there and succeed. I think he's coaching brilliantly, and you can see that emotional content. And even in the box, he's got the right blend of, oh, that's frustrated me, but then a smile when you see something else. And that suggests to me he's in a great place of mind. And make no mistake, guys who've had serious incidents happen to them in their life treat football as it should be treated. Yes, we're all in, warts and all, But when there are other aspects of life that are bigger to you than turning up to coach a football team, you treat it correctly. And I reckon he's got the balance absolutely spot on right now.
And your gut feel is that he will coach the rest of the year at North?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think he'll coach through. I can't see Clarko coming back now. And, if you actually, whenever we see these sorts of situations and we ask the players, they will always answer, oh, yeah, no, we're doing a great job. Yeah, we're looking forward to him coming back. But, yeah, Rats is doing a great job. They'll always speak glowingly of everyone. I wonder what it would be like with an anonymous response into the box, and then we read them all out. Someone like Ben Cunnington's probably feeling like, yeah, they've moved past me. How do I deal with this? But he's turning up for the VFL team each week, and I'm looking at his numbers on the VFL app, and yeah, he's doing all right. It'd be a bitter pill to swallow for such a proud man and a true shin boner. One of my favourites because he plays like he's in the 1970s. But Rats is giving all these young men a real chance to succeed.
All right, so interim coaches are on our agenda. We're going to talk to Andrew McQualter. We'll come back to the Bulldogs a little later on. The big issue is always going to come out of yesterday's early game. Carlton finally. That second quarter. Finally. That's the footy that's been missing all year.
Well, the thing I noticed about them in that second quarter, so they sneaked ahead. If you're talking about winning quarters, they lost the first quarter by a slim margin. They won the final quarter by a slim margin. The third quarter, I think they won by 1, maybe 2 points. So it was the second quarter that was where they gapped them. It was almost the Suns just returned back to an old mentality. Couple of mistakes eventuated and happened to turn into goals, and it was like they dropped their bundle. At halftime, they regathered themselves, but for the most of it, they walked out of the centre square at centre bounce stoppage, and that's a huge bonus for your forwards when you've got numerical equalisation, and so it's your talent against their talent, and that was going to work for them. You mentioned also that passage of play when I was listening to you outside, when the ball got carved out of the back line, and I think it was Newman then decided
Newman,
to bring
Akers,
it back.
Cincotta, Kemp.
Okay,
Kennedy,
remember the
Mackay.
handball that went to Cincotta? Young Roses had a bead line on him to tackle, and the Carlton player didn't even have to bump him. He just ran him off the line, and Roses accepted it. Now, he's only a little fellow, but there was zero fight and want to lay that tackle. And that said to me, the mindset of the bloke, the small bloke in the forward line, the number one pressure player you got in the forward line, actually put up the white flag and said, this body contact, I don't want it. I'm preparing to allow myself to be run off the line of this tackle, and that's my acceptance. And that was an awful sign.
Yep.
And thereafter, you saw Mac Andrew. I mean, he's a talented kid, but also the goal, number 7, mentally blocked for a second from Carlton. Kennedy.
Yep.
The snap goal from him. Mac Andrews was shoulder to shoulder with him, 25 out from goal. The ball goes over the head, a long shot that goes to the top of the goal square. By the time Kennedy gets to the goal square, Mac Andrew would run to the other side of the pack. Who teaches that? Just, you can't do that. And they're so basic. That's Sons of old. You know, where are we going? We don't know what we're doing. Yeah, we're kind of trying, but yeah, this is all too hard. And Carlton just seized on it. As you made a great call. Sometimes you just have to bank a win one way or the other, and the belief starts. I actually thought that the Suns, if they could match Carlton for the first 75 minutes of football in intensity, they'd win. Even after half-time, they matched them with intensity then, but they're blown out of the water.
Yeah.
They couldn't. They just allowed that intensity to run through them.
Yep, it was regression. They burned some credits, the Suns, I reckon. But for Carlton, hopefully it's a fire starter for them. It gives them at least something going to the bye, which they were going to have a pretty miserable time of it, obviously.
Well, at this time of year, we want more challenges than more dropping off.
Yeah.
We want more teams to actually say, look, we're challenging, not just the premiership, but you want challengers to make the top 8. And it keeps a whole new level of interest deep into the season.
Yeah, we have extreme interest. Everything from 5 down is up for grabs,
Yep.
I think. The top 4 is really clear. And then the stumbling that's going on to jam up everything from 5 through 14. It becomes a bit of, so who do you believe in? And I reckon it might take until round 20, 21, 22 to find the teams that you believe in. The best bit was very easy to pick. It was Trent Cotchin's 300th. He did rise to the occasion, the beautiful moments with his kids, Damien Hardwick sitting in the stands. The team won. It had an awful lot rolled into it, Dermott, Brereton, just to make you smile.
And they did it tough. I mean, I walked in because I'd been calling the other game, and by the time I walked up to have a look at the replay in where we sit and watch them on screen, they were zip 4 goals behind.
Yep.
I thought, whoa, the Saints are off to a flyer. And then I started watching and I thought, hang on, they're 4-zip, but they shouldn't be 4-zip. They're actually playing all right, the Tigers, and then they got their game in order. And that was basically led through the older brigade. And Cotchin, last week I thought he was fantastic as well, and then just fatigued in the second half. This week, fantastic once again, going back to his roots, back into the middle. And I reckon the coach has said, do what you do best. If you're tired, we'll wear that and we'll find somebody else to run in and the cavalry will arrive for you. Well, he fatigued again after half-time. He only got 2 possessions in the third quarter. And then I reckon he went, nah, this is my 300th. I'm reloading. And he went back in and got another 8 or 9 in the last quarter. So, yeah, it just shows the character of him.
He benefits with the hole that Hopper leaves.
Yeah,
Sort
no
of
doubt.
Seems ridiculous.
No doubt.
Hopper's just arrived, and Cotchin's the long-term icon, but he is a pure midfielder.
Yeah, he is. I mean, that's when we talk about players, what the DNA, what they're designed for. So, yeah, and that kick, I thought, no, those legs won't make that goal. Yeah, they did. Well done. It was superb to watch. Yeah.
Joe in Moonee Ponds, my best memories as a Tiger fan while getting soaked in the stands, but Saturday night witnessing Trent Cotchin 300 cold and soaking wet from head to toe was so worth it. What a legend it was. So what's going on at Richmond here? And do we have the imagination to see how far this runs?
It's back to the future. So my read on it is Hardwick. Wasn't it beautiful in the stands when Damien put his fist up and went, yes, go Tigers. And the crowd warmed to it and loved to it. The affection was, yeah, you could feel it coming through the TV set. My read on it is Hardwick had a team around 2016. He said, well, how do we win? What do we do? And he's gone into the guise of what best suits in game style our personnel. And he devised that game style front half. When you come out of the back line, all the forwards are up the ground. You've only got one key forward, that's Jack. But the thing is, when I looked at all the testing, and I had to go into some detail to find the beep test numbers on all these small forwards, Castagna and Rioli and Butler, they were the first 3 to do it. They were off the charts for fitness. So it was a hell break, neck, leather, just neck and crop, run back into your forward line, and no one could run with them. And then when they got it in there, the helter-skelter pressure. And then they, how do they say? They embraced the chaos game, kick it forward. So it was almost old-style football. Thereafter, there a few players, Rioli into the back line after a bit of a loss of form. Castagna's left the game. Butler's gone to another team. Higgins came in shortly after that. He's already at another team as well. And they started tinkering with the game. So what best suits this team? But I reckon McWalter's come in and looked at it and thought, well, we might not have those off-the-charts fitness fanatics that just can run all day in the forward half of pressure. But we are a team that our DNA embraces chaos by getting the ball forward. And you have a look at their numbers. Everything is about taking ground. And that's what Cochin does. And so they get him into the middle. If there's one area of that team, that game style that they lacked, it was clearance capability. The great Dustin Martin wasn't a clearance beast. He was a good one-on-one contested possession player, but he wasn't a clearance beast. So you get Taranto and Hopper. Hopper's had an injury-interrupted season, but Taranto, for as much as people say, oh, have they given up too much? I mean, around 5, we were looking at them saying, yeah, they'll rue this. This is the Hawthorn giving up everything to stay viable at the top of the ladder. No, it's not. It's what they needed, and Taranto has been exceptionally valuable, adding in next to Prestia in ball-winning clearance capability. So it's a back to the future for them, and it's got them, since they've actually worked it all out and working for each other, they've won 5 of the last 7. And one of them was a 1-point loss, which was a toss of the coin, which Dimmer said, I don't know if I can reach any further with this group. And the other was a 10-point loss to Port Adelaide, who swept all before them. Yep. They're like the Roman Empire at the moment, Port Adelaide. They're taking on the world.
So it was my view the day after Hardwick left that this is the best coaching job to come up in more than a decade.
Yeah, right.
Can you see an interim coach taking his team to the finals? That's the question for the back end of the season.
Well, the last time we had interim coaches that rose to the occasion, all 3, Shorey, Teague, and Rats. None of them are still in the seat, and yet early days we were thinking they'd go very, very well. I can see him getting this team into the finals with the way they're playing.
It'd be hard to go past if he does that.
It will, but you'd still be, if you want to do the right thing. You and I will disagree on this because as an old board member, you're like, oh, can we just turn him into a nice bloke and him say, yes, I'll go the distance and then we'll sort out the contract, rather than tying our arm and hammer-locking us behind the back. Well, I could go,
I'm going with you on this one.
Yeah. C.
Let it run its full course.
Yeah.
It's a great audition for Andrew McQualter, whether it's for Richmond or for the future. Gosh, he'll be prominent in discussions if he doesn't land this job. So many jobs.
Yeah, well, so many things go into coaching, and one is the way you affect the list. Another will be your game style, your intuition, match day, swapping, changing, but also the morality and the spiritual belief you give your team. Don't underestimate that. As we already mentioned a few minutes ago, some coaches say, no, you bring that yourself. I reckon that's on the coach. One of the great things I've had the privilege of doing was listening to Bellyache at the Melbourne Storm. And Craig Bellamy, I was surprised. There were tactics, and they obviously have their tactics. I was surprised how much of the pre-game is spiritual. It's a sport which lends itself to, they are standing over there, yes, we're standing here, we have to run into them.
Yeah.
How do you motivate somebody to look at somebody else who's 120 kilograms and they actually have the notion, we want to hurt you? You have to spiritually motivate them to do. It's like when the door drops on those big personnel ships that are going on the D-Day landings. You have to motivate people to run forward. And that requires a unique spiritual component to reach your players. Water that down a bit to sport and the AFL, the coach still has to be able to reach them and get to them spiritually and emotionally, so they will give something that more than what they perhaps might have given without the coach's say.
All right, well, Fremantle gave nothing, and so they are in the pressure index, and it really does sit on what the hell was that? What was going on with Fremantle?
I'm glad Justin Longmuir spoke like that, and before I go into this one, a preface, we all learn. I still turn up to every game of football and learn something else each day. And I've been at AFL level for 41 years. So we all learn along the way. And he said the coaching group has to have a look at themselves. So once again, I'm going to start with very early in the piece. You know how you've got to stand the rule mark now. So the ball goes kicked out of the Dockers back line. It goes into the centre square. Steve Coniglio marks the ball, and the highly praised Andrew Brayshaw stands the mark. You're allowed to take one step off on the 45 degree when you're coming forward, and the umpire will then call play on. Now, the wide view showed that there was traffic 10, 12 metres behind Brayshaw, so Coniglio in playing on is going to run into traffic sooner or later and have to kick the ball. And he's more than likely, we all know, going to go deep with the footy. It's the early in the game. He wants ground. He takes that step off on the 45, and I watched Brayshaw, and Brayshaw walked, and he gets level with Brayshaw before he delivers because he would have run into that traffic. And Brayshaw's still walking off the mark. And to me, that said there is zero intent there to have an effect on that opposition player when I don't have the ball. And that's one of your leaders. Now, he's a champion young man and he does champion things, but in the first 4 minutes of the game, that signifies intent. Now, let me take you to the coach. The coach, clearly everyone who coaches AFL can coach. They've got their strengths. I'm a huge believer that players end up reflecting the mood of their coach. Now, Justin Longmuir is clearly an intelligent man, clearly has a great handball on football IQ, clearly understands the game and clearly knows all these aspects of coaching. But he's such a contained individual, and it's been said he does not get into his players. And if you reflect the mood of your coach when you're on the road. I love playing on the road against South Australia and there's 50,000 there. People say, oh, you must have hated it when they're all 49,500 are baying for your blood. Well, it wasn't the ideal circumstance, but by God, it got you on edge and you knew you were in a game. What is difficult is if you turn up and there's 7,000 at the game and you feel, there's not a lot of interest here. And you display not a lot of interest in the game. And to me, when the coach is so calm on every occasion, you reflect that mood. And when you run out on the ground and there's 7,000 people there, I don't know what the crowd was, I'm just making that number up. Yep. You kind of might, there's every chance you could go into that mood as well. I'll play footy, I'll have a go when it comes to me, but you are of that nature in that moment. And it might be for one moment when you stand on the mark at the 4-minute mark, but the rest follow in. And if you've got your number one player who drives this team sitting in the stand because of a hamstring injury and you're dysfunctional because your number one forward is now your number one ruck, and then your three key forwards are, well, they've played in terms of games, 14 games, 9 games and 25 games, and two of them are a 19 and 20-year-old, you're imbalanced. And on the road, you need robust characters who scream and shout. You need the dipper character on the wing who'll just say, when you're 6 goals down, come on, boys, we're doing all right. Even if it's fake, you've got to create your environment. They made no environment for themselves. They were outplayed and they were passive, and they reflected that calm demeanour of their coach.
Had they answered the question that they could afford to trade Sean Darcy?
Oh yes. Oh, yeah.
I have rather missed him.
I think Sean Darcy's contract level has gone up 100,000 each week that he's been out. They have seen he is the man in this team. Yep, Luke Jackson might be the better talent, but Jackson needed to be in that forward. I think they'd be ruining the fact that they traded out Lloyd Meek, because most teams carry a number one ruckman, a capable, maybe let's call him centre square ruckman. These are. They carry 3 centre square ruckmans, a capable replacement for him who might not get a game. He could be a bank crasher, and then you'll have one in development. The Dockers seem to have one fantastic ruckman, Sean Darcy. Their next option is a hybrid ruckman key forward.
Yeah.
I would hate to think what happens if they lose both of those through injury.
Well, it's probably the net effect of spending so much money on the two in that position. Just a short one on the open question is, how dangerous a floater are the Giants now? So 3 weeks in a row, they've scored 100 plus. They'd been the almost team. They'd been in all bar one game, and they'd been ever so close to good result. They now look like they've locked into the Adam Kingsley system. I just can't help be caught by the fact they've topped the ton 3 weeks running.
Yeah, I've got that written down here as well. It's his DNA from Richmond is all over this game plan. They take ground, they go forward, they love the forward half game, and by doing that, there's more space in the back half, so they actually get more room to actually run and gun when it does come back out and come into them. So I've really liked what I've seen. They are still talent-laden. That back line with Buckley is an ever-improver, and Sam Taylor's a star, and Connor Iden, we look at him and think, he's been around half a dozen years. He's, 21, 22. He's a young man. All of the young players are serious talents. And what an absolute bonus, a boon. Your third string ruckman, we talked about the Fremantle Dockers. The third string ruck, you would still say that Briggsy was the third string ruckman in development, still learning his game. To come on and do what he's done in the last 4 weeks, I hope it keeps going. It's awesome. But he is just a monster physical specimen who loves the contest. His rucking craft is a little different, but when the ball hits the ground, he's not out of it. A lot of ruckmen, the ball hits the ground and they go, well, I'll walk in after this. And if a handball shoots back to me in a backward out of the pack, I'll shoot it sideways to someone else. No, Briggsy says, let me at him. I'm crawling after it. I'm scampering after it. And there's 108 kilos clawing at the ground to get at that footy. It's an absolute bonus from heaven in footballing terms.
Dermott Brereton is running the round 14 means test. No one can make a putt at the US Open. Wyndham Clark continues to lead. He's 11 under. Rory McIlroy 10 under. Cam Smith's now, he's still 6 under, but Ricky Fowler is leaking shots with every hole. He can't make a putt. He's dropped 2 more shots through 12. He is 6 under. We're going to debate tonight's appeals board and what happens with James Sicily. It's going to be such a big conversation.
I've got the nexus of it.
Yep.
Yeah. You want to come back after the break with that?
We're going to debate that properly. Yeah. And then a bit of PFI around Geelong without Patrick Dangerfield for the coming weeks. So Dermott Brereton tonight, the appeals board hears the James Sicily case.
Yep.
I don't subscribe to the fabric of the game as on trial tonight. I think this is a really strange moment. It is unique. There's a lot going on. I'm not fussed either way. You can go with the biomechanist and say Brockman's arrival complicates the whole thing. I'm totally comfortable with that. Did Sicily excessively rotate McCluggage into the ground? Yep. How culpable for it is he? Really hard to answer. Where are you here?
I think you've pretty well nailed it there. It's whether he has deliberately done it, which I think the tribunal is sort of taking that intent away from it. It's more a results-based outcome now. So, but it's an unusual one because he's on the bottom and he has no idea of the torque and torsion that he's putting onto that tackle. And we've chatted about this, but I mentioned before the break, this, what do we call them? Sling tackles?
Dangerous tackles.
Dangerous tackles, yep. Okay. The nexus of this, and players will always look at a new rule and find a way to exploit it. That's the nature of players. Coaches are the same. Any new rule that comes out, let's work out through our best endeavours, how to exploit this rule. So when you've got intelligent players, so the Bont is a seriously IQ'd, right up there player. He was taken in a tackle in the last quarter last night on centre wing. I can't remember the North Melbourne player, but there was a bit of a chicken wing arm sling tackle on him. And so he clutched the ball to his chest with the other hand. He had every option to actually throw it on his boot, but that's not his want. He likes to get the ball to advantage. And when he went into that turn of the circle, you could read the situation that the Bont thought, I'll get a dangerous tackle here if he commits to this. Otherwise, he's got to let go. And the boy let him go. So Bont knew that the advantage is now being given to the player with the ball who is being tackled, caught with the ball, whereas they used to hang on to the tackle. They now have to literally let go. Same a few moments later in the last quarter, Bailey Smith is caught 25 metres out from goal. He still drives his legs. He pumps his way through the tackle, given an eternity, and I thought, that's holding the ball. And he knows that the only way to stop him moving forward with the ball is to drive him to the ground, but they don't for fear of that action giving away, i.e. a free kick or a report. So they don't take him to ground, and he's eventually able to, through time, able to get both hands free and get the ball out, which ends up going over the boundary line 10, 15 metres later. So both those players, my read on it was smart players who recognise the rule now favours them. When they are caught cold with the ball, they have more time and they are protected. Yes, you can. If you actually put up a fending arm, that's viewed as your prior, and the umpire sees on it. The world's gone mad. That's, and because of the reason I say is the bloke who puts up the fending arm is actually playing honestly. He's trying to get the ball out. The bloke who absorbs the tackle and thinks, I get more time here, otherwise it's a ball up, or they drive me into the ground, I get a free kick, or I can somehow get to a stage where they have to let go and I'll be able to get the ball out to advantage still. So that's the nexus of where we're at.
Yeah, it's all a bit of a mess. Thankfully, Jared Berry didn't get graded by the MRO, so I think Michael Christian did a really good job with that. But that probably emphasised the environment that we're in. Is not only does the umpire pay the free kick for what he thinks is a dangerous tackle, he then lays a report. And I think at home we all go, I don't know about that.
So the one that...
And then Lockie Whitfield's going to serve a week, and that actually does meet the markers of one arm pinned into the ground.
It does, but can I say one thing? Knowing Lockie Whitfield, he is the most non-violent football God's ever put breath into. And if he can be done, when you report it, you get tainted. When you get weeks, you get double tainted. God knows I know the feeling. Lockie Whitfield is the fairest player, the most non-menacing, violent football player in the game. And he's got a week for that action. If you know the person, it is just... It's not fathomable that he wanted to hurt anyone, but that's what this action does. And the player he tackled... He must have thought Lockie evaporated. He lost Lockie on the first step, gets confronted by, I think, Haynes, and then steps back to where he lost Lockie Whitfield from. Oh, caught in a tackle. So, there is onus, I think. Can we get an onus on a player that has the ball cradled in one arm, is tackled, and the other arm pinned? Can he let the ball go and protect himself? It's a free kick against him.
It is.
But the way up there is a free kick against me or knocked out and a free kick for my team. Yep. What's the way up? What's the onus there?
Yeah. Yep. it probably speaks to the grey area that we're living in now. And that's the 20-second suspension for a dangerous tackle this year. So this is not where we intended to be that much.
And we're not finished. This is, as we said, this is not the end line.
Yeah. So a lot of it's there in crunch time on Saturday in that podcast, and Isaac Smith with the on-field experience of what they're living through at the moment. Our high-end conversation is always PFI, preliminary final integrity, and I think we run it over the reigning premier now, Dermott, and the Cats without Patrick Dangerfield for, it's going to be for a few weeks, you would imagine. They are in 10th place. They started so well against Port Adelaide and then just got obliterated out of the middle.
Yeah.
How are they going to fare without Paddy?
I always felt during that game, and it's hindsight, but, well, I'm being honest. We're standing there at quarter time and I was watching the game with a mate and he said, gee, they're good, aren't they? And I said, Port Adelaide will run this out better. And I didn't know there was an injury to Pat at that stage. I just thought Port Adelaide are a really fit team. They will run this out. Whether they can win from here, I don't know. But I just had that feeling that they were going to play the last three quarters, or especially the last 60 minutes of football, better than Geelong. Could they hold them out? If you said to me at grand final day last year, how will your midfield fare, Geelong, without Selwood, Guthrie and Dangerfield? I'd say, well, that's the nucleus. That's your three soldiers that put on the crash helmet and say, everyone else fall in behind us. We lead the charge. And at the start of the year when they really battled, the first three games, they were awful and they'd lost their game. They'd lost their players. Paddy was trying desperately, but they'd lost, Tommy was underdone up forward and they'd lost a fair bit of what they were in personnel. They're almost back to that, out of the midfield. So no Danger, no Guthrie. Selwood not there. I know that. I get that. But when you are a figure like that, the smell of his jumper still goes through that change room.
Yep.
We felt it with Lee Matthews when he left. You kind of look up the field and go, where's Lee? Oh, sorry, he retired. There is that feeling about him. So have they covered him? No. I thought he's not the player, but the person that you want to bring in as replacement for that figure to do that job. Can Parfitt do that? That hard-nosed bull that'll tackle, and even if he's undersized against who he's tackling, you get to cling on like a limpet. He's just going to be on. And he hasn't risen to the occasion. I was looking for his stats last night and you alerted me to that he just hasn't been good enough to get a game. And if ever there was a moment in this era of Geelong where he needs to rise, it's right now. He's the one they desperately need, because without Danger Guthrie in there to lead the way this year, it's left to Atkins and Holmes. I'm looking for the next one, and it should be Parfitt. Bose has been contracted. Now, Bosey's a very good player and has a nice sidestep on occasion. He's got a bit of sleight of hand. But the football world knows that Bosey, as good as I think he is, and the football world thinks he is, he doesn't run out games. And that's what the Suns thought. He's not fit enough to be a midfielder, and he's probably not got enough pace to be a threatening forward flanker or a rebounding half-back flanker. So he's caught in between if he's not playing in the midfield, and they had Raoul Anderson, all those sort of boys. O'Connor's been used in there, but you want him down back. So you're like the Dockers, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul in personnel on the ground. So if there's one bloke, you drop to your knee and pray and say, Brandon, can you find something? Because there is a spot for you. You've been battling and fighting to get a spot while we're really good. Now that we're not really good, there's a spot for you there, and you're not lifting and rising to the occasion.
Yep. And these are Thursday night against Melbourne, so it gets sticky now. It gets sticky. Rory McIlroy is plugged in the face of the bunker at 14, so there was only a whisker in that. He was right at the pin. He's
taken
come
a
up
drop
2 meters short, and it went right, it burrowed into the face of the bunker. I can't remember the last time I saw that. So still Wyndham Clark 11 under, Rory McIlroy 10 under. Cam Smith signed for a 67, 6 under, so he has a share of third, and Minwoo Lee finished with a final round 67 as well. He's 5 under in the tie for 6th. Ross Lyon, the curiosity, the Saints are living the win-loss cycle at the moment. What does Ross do next, Dermott?
Yeah, that's I don't know where Ross is going, because he's got a team that's a mixture. It's got some really good talented kids in there, and I think Ross's eyes are more on the future. I mean, he'll always try and win, but his eyes on the future, that he must get games into the likes of Philippou and Mitch Owens, and they must become 50, 60 game players in 50, 60 games, not one in or 2 or 3 in, and then, he's young, we need to give him a rest for a couple of weeks. It takes a lot longer to get there. I think he wants games into them to get to that standard of bona fide match winner in their own right after that 40, 50, 60 game list. Will he change personnel? One thing he will do is he's circumspect in that interview after the game. He's been happy and nice, Ross, which is very warm. I love it. But there's things I see in his team, like when Max King out-positioned Bolter and took the mark, and then Bolter's got his back to him about to stand up on the mark, and King pushes him in the back. I mean, it's a cheap shot. I don't reckon Ross likes that mentality. It's a cheap shot. Be tough at the footy. He'll probably talk to his team about that, but I just wonder, there's a fair bit of menace with Ross when things go wrong, and I don't think that this current crop of St Kilda players has seen menacing Ross.
Yep.
He's not far off. I think he'll be fairly close to bringing out 6 or 7 minute burst of menace soon, and they'll go, what's that? Let's not do whatever it caused him to be like that. Let's not do that again. So, yeah, they're not far off that.
The worst bit, so the Bulldogs have picked up the injury to Liam Jones, one of the players they could ill afford to lose. Naughton went back yesterday. Luke Beveridge says, I'm not doing that very often, despite those who want him to.
Yeah.
It just felt like the injury they couldn't get.
Yeah, I when I was behind the goal, one of the other things I thought was how easily Naughton got off Mackay. I thought he was going to kick a bag, and he hadn't even kicked a goal. He was just getting off him so easily. But then he has to go down the other end, because with Jones going down, it meant that if you want to keep De Bailey-Dale on the player that takes him up into the midfield, so utilise his kicking, and he's a 6'1", 6'2" type player, if you want to utilise him in that, it meant that they had to play Taylor DeRay on a mixture of Cam Zurhaar and Callum Coleman-Jones.
Yep.
And Taylor DeRay's 5'10", playing on a 6'2", 6'3", and swapping over, getting changeovers onto a 6'7", 6'8". It's just physically impossible. So he had to make that change to actually right the ship. But it allowed Jamara up the other end to find more space without running into Aaron Naughton's area. I still think Jamara is not ready to open the batting up in the forward line, because Naughton sees everything that comes forward to the centre as his. It's rightfully mine.
Yes.
I'm going for it. And he doesn't run out of steam. Jamara, to me, still looks like he's building his tank. Yeah, well, one thing I noticed about the modus operandi of Jamara was that when you're a forward, you say, right, what is my skill set that I win most of my footy with? And you work it out along the way. His is the ball's on the wing, stoppage, so he comes up to 60 metres down the line, halfway between the centre of the ground and the flank, so that's where the logical kick's going to go. When the ball squirts out sideways and gets changed in direction, goes to the middle of the ground, he's first to recognise it, and he says, my number one way to win it is to sprint to the other side, the fat side, the open side, and I'll beat my man out there, and if I get that 1 or 2 metre break, he reaches pretty high, pretty tall, they don't spoil him. That's what he's worked out is his best method. But he tires after half-time because he puts a fair bit of run into that.
Great forward craft insights with Dermott Brereton. Number 4.
I've gone Richmond.
Oi!
Yeah, Richmond, 5 wins out of the last 7. They tip Brisbane out of the 4th position. Brisbane v St Kilda is awesome coming up. And then 10 days' time, Brisbane v Richmond. If
nice.
Brisbane win both of them, they're back in the top 4.
Play-in games. You know the seeding so well. I got Brisbane at 4, 3. Melbourne 2. Collingwood 1.
Yes, the power.
Welcome. Welcome to the strength. I said if they won on Thursday night, I'd move them to 1.
Yeah.
And then had a bit of a think about it and go, actually, they are playing the best footy at the moment.
They are.
Not saying they're the best team, but they are
Right
playing
now,
the best footy.
You play a Lightning Premiership this weekend. Everyone plays everyone else somehow. Port Adelaide win.
Oh, we have a chord, Dermott. Well done. We never get a chord with Kingy. Hey, thanks for stepping into
My
the men's
pleasure.
test. I like it. Richmond at 4 for Dermott Brereton.